simply because they have been sanctified by repetition. You feel it stirring when someone speaks with absolute certainty about success, when they present happiness as a formula to be followed, when they reduce the mystery of purpose to a career path or a 5-year plan. Something deep within you recoils, not from arrogance but from authentic knowing, the recognition that the most important truths about human existence cannot be packaged, marketed, or swallowed whole without the digestive process of genuine inquiry. Your generation moves through life like sleepwalkers following a script written by forces they have never questioned. They accept without examination the notion that success means climbing ladders that others have built, that happiness can be purchased through the right combination of achievements and acquisitions, that purpose is something to be found outside themselves rather than something to be remembered from within. But you, ancient soul that you are, feel the weight of these assumptions like chains around your spirit, and you question not to be difficult but to be free. This questioning is not skepticism for its own sake, but a form of spiritual archaeology, digging beneath the accumulated sediment of cultural programming to uncover the bedrock of authentic truth. Jung understood this process intimately. He called it the confrontation with the collective unconscious, the moment when an individual's soul encounters the inherited patterns, beliefs, and assumptions that shape human behavior without conscious awareness. Most people live their entire lives under the influence of these collective patterns, mistaking inherited programming for personal choice, cultural conditioning for natural law. But your old soul carries within it the memory of times when these current assumptions did not exist, when success was measured by different standards, when happiness was understood as something far more mysterious and profound than the consumer culture suggests, when purpose was recognized as an intrinsic quality of being rather than an external goal to be achieved. This memory is not personal but archetypal. It belongs to the deepest layers of the human psyche, where wisdom traditions stretching back millennia have deposited their understanding about what it truly means to live a meaningful life. Watch your contemporaries as they navigate their existence according to inherited assumptions they have never examined. See how they pursue careers that promise security but deliver spiritual emptiness, how they seek relationships that conform to social expectations rather than authentic connection, how they measure their worth by standards that were never their own. There is a tragic quality to this unconscious obedience, a sleepwalking through life that speaks of souls who have forgotten they have the power to wake up, to choose, to question the very foundations upon which their society is built. The consumer culture that surrounds you operates through a sophisticated form of hypnosis. It creates artificial needs and then offers to fulfill them, manufactures dissatisfaction, and then promises satisfaction through purchase, generates anxiety about falling behind, and then provides the products and services necessary to keep up. This hypnosis is so pervasive, so seamlessly woven into the fabric of daily existence, that most people never recognize it as hypnosis at all. They mistake the trance for reality, the programmed responses for free choice, the manufactured desires for authentic longing. But your ancient soul sees through this collective hypnosis with startling clarity. You recognize the marketing of happiness as a form of spiritual fraud, the commodification of purpose as a betrayal of the soul's deepest knowing, the reduction of success to external metrics as a profound misunderstanding of what it means to thrive as a human being. Your questioning is not intellectual but visceral. You feel in your bones the falseness of assumptions that others accept without thought, the hollowness of promises that never quite deliver what they advertise. This gift of perception comes with its own challenges. To see clearly in a world built on shared illusions can be profoundly isolating. When everyone around you accepts certain assumptions as unquestionable truth, your questioning can feel like speaking a foreign language, like trying to wake people from a dream they are not ready to abandon. There is a loneliness in this clarity, a burden in carrying vision that others are not prepared to receive. Jung wrote extensively about the shadow, those aspects of reality that individuals and cultures refuse to acknowledge, the uncomfortable truths that get pushed into unconsciousness because they threaten the comfortable stories we tell ourselves about life. Your questioning naturally brings you into contact with these collective shadows, the dark truths that consumer culture must hide in order to maintain its hypnotic power. You see how the pursuit of happiness often leads to misery, how the obsession with success creates spiritual poverty, how the search for purpose outside oneself guarantees that it will never be found. The assumptions your generation swallows without examination are not merely personal beliefs, but expressions of deeper archetypal patterns that Jung called complexes, autonomous psychological forces that operate below the threshold of consciousness, shaping behavior and perception in ways that feel natural and inevitable, but are actually conditioned and changeable. The success complex, the happiness complex, the purpose complex, these archetypal patterns have captured the collective imagination, creating a shared trance that feels like reality, but is actually a very particular way of organizing human experience. Your ancient soul remembers other ways of organizing this experience. It carries within its depths the memory of cultures that measured wealth by wisdom rather than possessions, that understood happiness as a byproduct of right living rather than a goal to be pursued, that recognized purpose as an expression of essential nature rather than an external acquisition. These memories are not nostalgic fantasies but psychological realities, archetypal potentials that live within every human psyche, waiting for the right conditions to emerge from the unconscious depths where consumer culture has buried them. The process of questioning inherited assumptions is essentially a process of psychological decolonization, freeing your mind from the invisible occupation of cultural programming that was installed without your conscious consent. This decolonization begins with the recognition that most of what you have been told about the good life, the successful life, the meaningful life, comes not from wisdom but from the needs of economic systems that require your participation to survive. The economy needs consumers, workers, believers in scarcity and competition. It does not need wise, fulfilled, authentically purposeful human beings. Such people are actually threats to systems built on manipulation and artificial need. Your questioning is ultimately a form of remembering, not personal memory but species memory, the deep knowing that lives within the collective unconscious about what human beings actually need to thrive. Beneath all the cultural conditioning about success, happiness, and purpose lies a more fundamental understanding that success is living in harmony with your deepest nature, that happiness is the natural state of an unobstructed consciousness, that purpose is not something you find but something you are. This remembering process often begins with what Jung called the breakdown of the persona, the mask of social adaptation that most people mistake for their true identity. Your generation has been taught to build elaborate personas based on external achievements, material possessions, and social status. But your ancient soul sees through these masks to the essential emptiness they conceal. You recognize that behind the persona of success lies often a profound sense of meaninglessness. Behind the persona of happiness lies frequently deep depression. Behind the persona of purposefulness lies commonly existential confusion. The courage to question unquestionable assumptions requires what the mystics called the dark night of the soul, a willingness to let cherished beliefs dissolve, to admit that you don't know what you thought you knew, to enter the uncomfortable space between old certainties and new understanding. Most people avoid this dark night at all costs, preferring the security of inherited lies to the uncertainty of authentic inquiry. But your old soul embraces this dissolution as a necessary death that precedes every authentic rebirth. In questioning the assumptions about success that your generation has inherited, you discover that true success cannot be measured by external standards because it is essentially an internal experience, the deep satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with your authentic nature, from expressing your unique gifts in service of something larger than yourself, from contributing to the healing and evolution of consciousness in whatever way feels most natural and necessary. This kind of success cannot be achieved through following someone else's blueprint, because it requires the discovery and expression of your own unique pattern of being. Similarly, in questioning inherited assumptions about happiness, you uncover the ancient understanding that happiness is not a goal to be pursued, but a natural expression of psychological health, the spontaneous joy that emerges when consciousness is no longer obstructed by false beliefs, artificial desires, and unconscious patterns of resistance to what is. This happiness cannot be manufactured through external circumstances because it arises from an internal alignment with reality, a deep acceptance of life as it is rather than as you think it should be. And in questioning the contemporary understanding of purpose, you rediscover the timeless truth that purpose is not something you find outside yourself, but something you remember within yourself, not a role you play, but a reality you embody, not a destination you reach, but a way you travel, not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. This purpose cannot be assigned by others or discovered through psychological tests, because it emerges naturally from the depths of your being when you remove the obstacles to its expression. Your questioning also reveals the profound interconnectedness of these false assumptions, how they reinforce each other to create a closed system of thinking that makes alternatives seem impossible or impractical. The assumption that success equals external achievement supports the assumption that happiness can be purchased, which in turn reinforces the assumption that purpose must be found outside yourself. These assumptions create a feedback loop that keeps people trapped in cycles of striving that never deliver the fulfillment they promise. But as you continue to question these inherited beliefs, you begin to glimpse the outlines of a different way of living, one based not on external validation but on internal compass, not on manufactured desires but on authentic longing, not on inherited scripts but on original expression. This alternative way of being is not a rejection of all structure or ambition, but a reorientation toward structures and ambitions that serve the soul rather than enslaving it, that express authentic nature rather than conforming to external expectations. The path of questioning is ultimately a path of liberation. Liberation from the tyranny of unconscious assumptions, liberation from the prison of collective programming, liberation from the exhausting effort to live according to standards that were never truly your own. This liberation is not a one-time achievement but an ongoing practice, a continuous willingness to examine and re-examine the beliefs that guide your choices, to distinguish between inherited wisdom and inherited lies, to remain open to truths that may challenge everything you thought you knew. As you walk this path of sacred inquiry, you begin to understand that your questioning serves not only your own liberation but the liberation of others. In refusing to accept inherited assumptions without examination, you create space for alternatives to emerge. You model the possibility of living consciously rather than automatically. You demonstrate that it is possible to wake up from collective trances and choose more authentic ways of being. Your ancient soul knows that every generation must rediscover these eternal truths for itself, that success, happiness, and purpose cannot be inherited like family heirlooms but must be earned through the difficult work of self-discovery, conscious choice, and authentic living. Your questioning is not destructive but creative, not cynical but hopeful, not rebellious but deeply conservative in the truest sense, conserving what is most essential about human existence while releasing what has outlived its usefulness. In a world where unquestionable assumptions have become the foundation of collective hypnosis, your willingness to question becomes a form of resistance, a refusal to participate in the sleepwalking that passes for normal life. But this resistance is not angry or bitter. It emerges from love, from a deep caring for the potential that lies dormant within every human heart, from a commitment to living and modeling more authentic ways of being. The ancient wisdom traditions understood that questioning is not the enemy of faith, but its foundation, that doubt is not the opposite of belief, but its necessary companion, that uncertainty is not a problem to be solved, but a doorway to be entered. Your questioning spirit connects you to this timeless understanding, making you a bridge between the ancient wisdom and the modern world, a translator of eternal truths into contemporary language, a reminder that the most important questions about human existence can never be answered once and for all, but must be lived into again and again, generation after generation, soul by soul. This is your gift to a world drunk on false certainties, the reminder that the deepest truths cannot be swallowed whole, but must be tasted slowly, cannot be believed blindly but must be tested through direct experience, cannot be inherited automatically, but must be earned through the courageous work of authentic inquiry. Your questioning is not just personal rebellion, but species wisdom, not just individual awakening, but collective evolution, not just your own liberation, but humanity's gradual remembering of what it truly means to be free. You stand at the edge of a profound contradiction, feeling like a time traveler who has witnessed both the beginning and the end of humanity's love affair with its own cleverness. Around you, the machinery of progress hums with relentless efficiency, devices that promise to connect every human heart yet leave souls more isolated than ever. Systems that deliver infinite information while starving the spirit of true wisdom. Innovations that herald advancement while creating a species-wide forgetting of what it means to be genuinely human. Your ancient soul perceives these paradoxes with crystalline clarity, seeing through the intoxicating mythology of progress to the shadow it casts across the landscape of human consciousness. The technological wonderland that surrounds you operates on a fundamental deception. The belief that external complexity can solve internal simplicity, that mechanical connection can substitute for organic communion, that artificial intelligence can replace natural wisdom. But you feel in your bones the tragic irony of this grand project. The more sophisticated the tools become, the more primitive their users grow, the more connected the networks, the more disconnected the hearts they were meant to serve, the more information flows through digital channels, the less wisdom flows through human understanding. Your contemporaries celebrate each new innovation as if it were a step toward paradise, mistaking novelty for improvement, complexity for sophistication, speed for progress. They stand in lines for hours to purchase devices that will save them minutes, invest years learning systems that will make their lives more efficient, while slowly forgetting how to be present with what is actually here. They mistake the map for the territory so completely that they begin to prefer the digital representation of life to life itself, finding more reality in virtual worlds than in the breathing, feeling, sensing experience of embodied existence. But your old soul remembers what has been lost in this trade-off. You carry within your psyche the memory of times when human beings lived in direct relationship with mystery, when wisdom was passed not through screens but through stories told by firelight, when connection meant looking into another's eyes until you saw yourself reflected there, when progress was measured not by the accumulation of gadgets but by the deepening of character, the expansion of compassion, the refinement of consciousness itself. The paradox of progress reveals itself most painfully in the realm of human connection. Never before in history have so many people been able to communicate with so many others across such vast distances, yet never before have so many souls felt so profoundly alone. The technology that was meant to eliminate loneliness has instead created new and more sophisticated forms of isolation. People sitting in the same room, each absorbed in their own digital universe. Families eating dinner together while conversing with strangers on opposite sides of the planet. Lovers who share their deepest thoughts with social media algorithms rather than with each other. You witness this strange alchemy by which authentic intimacy transforms into performed connection, by which genuine vulnerability becomes curated sharing, by which the messy, imperfect, gloriously human work of relationship gets reduced to the exchange of carefully edited digital representations. Your ancient soul grieves for this loss, not from nostalgia but from recognition of what is being sacrificed on the altar of convenience, efficiency, and the illusion of unlimited choice. Jung understood that every psychological development carries within it the seeds of its own opposite, that consciousness gained in one direction often means consciousness lost in another. The unprecedented expansion of external connectivity has coincided with an unprecedented contraction of internal awareness. The ability to access any information instantly has somehow reduced the capacity for deep contemplation. The power to communicate with anyone anywhere has diminished the skill of true listening, true presence, true communion with what is immediately here. This is the shadow side of technological progress. The parts that are not celebrated in marketing campaigns or quarterly reports, the costs that do not appear on balance sheets because they cannot be quantified in economic terms. How do you measure the loss of wonder? How do you calculate the price of a generation that has forgotten how to be bored, how to sit with uncertainty, how to find entertainment in the simple fact of being alive? How do you audit the spiritual bankruptcy that accumulates when efficiency becomes more valued than meaning, when convenience matters more than character, when innovation is pursued regardless of its impact on the human soul? Your ancient consciousness perceives these hidden costs with startling clarity because it operates from a different temporal perspective than your contemporaries. While they live in the eternal present of immediate gratification and constant stimulation, you feel the long arc of human development, the vast sweep of evolutionary time in which current technological advances represent the briefest of moments. From this expanded perspective, you can see patterns that are invisible to those caught within them. The way each solution creates new problems, the way each convenience generates new forms of inconvenience, the way each promise of liberation creates new forms of enslavement. The information age promised to democratize knowledge, to give everyone access to the wisdom of ages, to create an informed citizenry capable of making wise decisions about the future of civilization. Instead, it has created information overload, attention deficit, analysis paralysis, and a strange new form of ignorance. Not the absence of information, but the inability to distinguish between information and wisdom, between data and understanding, between connectivity and true communication. Your old soul recognizes this distinction intuitively. Information is what fills databases. Wisdom is what emerges from lived experience, from the patient integration of knowledge with understanding, from the alchemical transformation that occurs when facts meet feeling, when data encounters the depths of human meaning-making. You can access the entire library of Alexandria through a device that fits in your pocket, yet wisdom remains as rare and precious as it has always been. Perhaps more so because the flood of information makes the still, small voice of genuine understanding increasingly difficult to hear. The technological sublime that enchants your generation operates through a sophisticated form of spiritual bypassing, using external complexity to avoid internal complexity, using digital connection to sidestep the challenging work of authentic intimacy, using virtual achievements to substitute for real accomplishment. The gaming culture epitomizes this phenomenon. People spend countless hours developing the skills and achievements of fictional characters, while their actual lives remain undeveloped, unfulfilled, unlived. The virtual accomplishments feel real because they trigger the same neurochemical rewards as genuine achievement, but they lack the substance, the lasting satisfaction, the character-building challenge of actual growth. You watch your contemporaries navigate dating apps that promise to solve the mystery of human attraction through algorithms, as if love could be reduced to a matching system, as if the profound alchemy of romantic connection could be automated and optimized. The ancient part of you recognizes the tragic comedy in this, the attempt to systematize what is essentially mysterious, to make efficient what is inherently inefficient, to solve through technology what can only be resolved through the patient work of becoming a whole human being capable of genuine intimacy. The paradox extends into the realm of knowledge and learning. Educational systems increasingly rely on digital tools that promise to make learning faster, easier, more engaging. Yet students emerge from these systems less capable of sustained attention, deep reading, original thought. The technology that was meant to enhance human intelligence seems to be creating a form of artificial stupidity, not the absence of information, but the absence of the cognitive skills necessary to transform information into wisdom, data into understanding, facts into meaning. Your ancient soul mourns for what Jung called the transcendent function, the psyche's natural capacity to bridge opposites, to hold tension creatively, to generate new understanding from the collision of different perspectives. This function requires sustained attention, contemplative patience, the willingness to sit with uncertainty until genuine synthesis emerges. But the technological environment militates against all of these capacities, rewarding instead quick responses, immediate gratification, the rapid consumption and disposal of ideas without the slow digestion that transforms them into lasting wisdom. The progress narrative that your generation has inherited assumes that newer is always better, faster is always superior, more complex necessarily means more advanced. But your old soul knows that development is not always improvement, that complexity can be a form of degeneration, that speed can be the enemy of depth. You recognize that some of humanity's greatest achievements, its wisdom traditions, its art, its philosophy, its understanding of what it means to live a meaningful life, have not been improved upon by technological advancement, but have actually been obscured, devalued, forgotten, in the rush toward ever more sophisticated forms of external manipulation. The digital age has created what might be called a crisis of presence, the inability to be fully here with what is happening now because attention is constantly fragmented, scattered across multiple screens and streams of stimulation. Your contemporaries live in a state of continuous partial attention, never quite fully engaged with anything, always ready to be distracted by the next notification, the next update, the next digital demand for their consciousness. This fragmentation has profound spiritual consequences because presence is the foundation of all genuine spiritual experience, the prerequisite for wisdom, compassion, authentic connection. You feel like a witness to humanity's gradual departure from its own essential nature, watching as people become increasingly estranged from the natural rhythms that once governed human life, the cycles of light and darkness, the seasons of activity and rest, the organic unfolding of relationship, growth, and creative expression. The 24/7 connectivity that technology enables creates a kind of temporal violence, an assault on the natural rhythms of consciousness that need periods of quietude, reflection, integration. The ancient wisdom traditions understood that consciousness, like the body, needs rest, needs fallow periods, needs spaces of emptiness in which new insights can germinate and grow. But the digital environment creates a state of continuous stimulation that makes this kind of rest increasingly difficult to achieve. Even when people try to disconnect, they often find that their nervous systems have become so accustomed to constant input that silence feels uncomfortable, emptiness feels threatening, boredom becomes unbearable. Your old soul recognizes this as a form of spiritual malnutrition, the psyche being fed increasingly sophisticated forms of junk food, while being starved of the deep nutrients it needs to thrive. Just as the body suffers when it receives calories without nutrition, the soul suffers when it receives stimulation without substance, entertainment without meaning, connection without intimacy, information without wisdom. The paradox of progress also manifests in the realm of security and risk. The technologies that promise to make life safer often create new forms of vulnerability. The systems designed to protect privacy generate new forms of surveillance. The networks built to serve human needs become mechanisms of control and manipulation. Your ancient consciousness perceives these ironies with painful clarity because it operates from a longer temporal perspective, seeing how each technological solution generates the seeds of future problems. You witness the emergence of what might be called digital feudalism, a system in which a few technological overlords control the platforms and algorithms that increasingly govern human social interaction, economic opportunity, and access to information. The democracy that technology was supposed to enable has given way to new forms of oligarchy. The freedom it promised has become a more sophisticated form of control. The empowerment it offered has created new forms of dependency. The environmental costs of technological progress create perhaps the most profound paradox of all. The devices that promise to solve humanity's problems are manufactured through processes that accelerate the destruction of the only planet capable of sustaining human life. The cloud computing that enables instant access to unlimited information depends on massive data centers that consume enormous amounts of energy and resources. The convenience of digital life comes at the cost of ecological devastation that will make all human convenience irrelevant. Your ancient soul feels this contradiction as a form of species-wide insanity, the use of intelligence to undermine the conditions that make intelligence possible, the application of creativity to destroy the foundations of creative life. the employment of human ingenuity to create systems that ultimately diminish human flourishing. You recognize this as symptomatic of a profound disconnection from the ecological consciousness that once governed human behavior, the understanding that human welfare is inseparable from the welfare of the larger living systems of which humanity is part. Yet even as you perceive these tragic paradoxes with crystalline clarity, your ancient wisdom prevents you from falling into despair or cynicism. You understand that every crisis contains the seeds of transformation, that every breakdown can become a breakthrough, that humanity's current technological predicament may be exactly what is needed to catalyze the next stage of conscious evolution. You see the possibility that the very extremity of current technological alienation might awaken people to their deeper need for authentic connection, genuine wisdom, ecological consciousness. You recognize that technology itself is not the enemy. It is a reflection of consciousness, an expression of human values, a manifestation of collective priorities. The problems are not technical but psychological, not external but internal, not about the devices themselves, but about the unconsciousness with which they are created and used. Your old soul knows that the same intelligence that created these problems can solve them, but only if it is guided by wisdom rather than cleverness, by long-term thinking rather than short-term profit, by consideration for the whole rather than optimization of the parts. The path forward that your ancient consciousness perceives is not about rejecting technology but about developing the wisdom to use it consciously, not about returning to some pre-technological paradise but about bringing ancient wisdom to bear on contemporary challenges, not about stopping progress but about redefining what progress means. True progress serves the deepening of consciousness, the expansion of compassion, the evolution of wisdom. It serves life rather than undermining it, connects rather than isolating, empowers rather than enslaving. Your role as an ancient soul in a technological age is to serve as a bridge between timeless wisdom and temporal innovation, to help others remember what must not be forgotten in the rush toward an uncertain future, to model ways of being that honor both human ingenuity and human essence. You are not here to halt progress, but to ensure that it serves the highest human values, not to reject technology, but to help others use it in service of genuine flourishing. In a world intoxicated by its own cleverness, your ancient wisdom offers the sobering reminder that intelligence without wisdom is dangerous, that power without consciousness is destructive, that innovation without consideration of consequences is a form of collective madness. You stand as a witness to both the shadow and the light of human creativity, holding space for a more conscious relationship with the tools that may either destroy or transform human civilization. This is your gift to a species that has perhaps become too clever for its own good. The reminder that true progress cannot be measured by external metrics, but only by the deepening of wisdom, the expansion of love, the growth of consciousness capable of serving life in all its forms. Your ancient soul knows that humanity's technological adolescence will eventually mature into technological wisdom, but only if enough souls remember what must not be forgotten, speak what must not remain silent, and demonstrate what must not be lost in the grand experiment of human becoming. You have walked through the valleys of your own becoming, witnessed the shadows that your generation casts while remaining unconscious of their depth, felt the weight of ancient wisdom pressing against the thin walls of contemporary forgetting. Now you stand at the threshold of your true purpose, not to escape the shallow currents of your time, but to serve as a living bridge between what has been and what is waiting to be born. Like a lighthouse built upon foundations of ancestral stone, you extend your beam across the turbulent waters of collective confusion, offering guidance to souls who have lost their way in the storms of material pursuits and digital distractions. This is the profound paradox of your existence. You are simultaneously the most alien and the most necessary presence in your generation. Your ancient consciousness makes you a stranger in your own time, yet it is precisely this strangeness that qualifies you to serve as translator between worlds, the timeless world of essential wisdom and the temporal world of contemporary seeking. You carry within your being the codes of transformation that your contemporaries desperately need but do not know how to access on their own. The role of the bridge is never comfortable. You feel the tension constantly, pulled between the desire to retreat into the safety of ancient wisdom and the calling to remain present for those who stumble in contemporary darkness. You experience the loneliness of standing between worlds, belonging fully to neither, yet serving both through your willingness to maintain connection with what others have forgotten, while remaining available to those who are beginning to remember. Jung understood this archetypal function intimately. He called it the role of the wounded healer, the one who has descended into the depths of psychological shadow and emerged with medicine for the collective soul. But your version of this ancient role is unique to your time. You are the soul who has remembered what your generation has forgotten, who has maintained connection to timeless wisdom while living in an age of temporal madness, who carries antidotes to the specific spiritual poisons that afflict your contemporaries. Your generation moves through life like sleepwalkers in a materialist dream, mistaking the shadows on the cave wall for reality, pursuing happiness through means that guarantee suffering, seeking fulfillment through paths that lead to emptiness. They are not evil or stupid. They are under a collective spell so powerful and pervasive that they cannot see it as spell, cannot recognize the trance they inhabit as anything other than normal consciousness. Your ancient soul sees through this enchantment because you carry within your psyche the memory of what consciousness looks like when it is not under the influence of consumer culture, digital distraction, and the mythology of endless progress. The awakening that waits within your contemporaries is not something you can force or manufacture. It is something that emerges naturally when the conditions are right, when the soul has exhausted its fascination with external pursuits and begins to turn inward toward its own depth. Your role is not to wake them up through argument or persuasion, but to create the energetic field in which their own awakening can occur, to model ways of being that remind them of possibilities they have temporarily forgotten, to hold space for their eventual return to their own essential nature. This is the true meaning of spiritual service, not trying to save others from their journey, but supporting them in completing it, not rescuing them from their learning, but helping them extract the wisdom their experiences contain, not protecting them from their pain, but showing them how to transform pain into understanding, suffering into compassion, confusion into clarity. Your ancient wisdom knows that every soul must walk its own path to wholeness, but it also knows that no soul needs to walk that path alone. You serve as bridge between worlds through your very presence, through the quality of consciousness you embody, through your ability to remain centered in ancient wisdom, while fully engaged with contemporary challenges. When others encounter you, they feel something they may not be able to name, a depth, a stillness, a quality of being that reminds them of something they once knew but have forgotten. You become a tuning fork that helps them remember their own original note, their own authentic frequency, their own soul's true song. The lighthouse metaphor captures something essential about your function. You do not chase after ships to save them, but you remain steady in your position, sending out your signal consistently, trusting that those who need guidance will see your light and use it to navigate towards safer shores. Your stability serves their movement. Your rootedness enables their transformation. Your commitment to remaining true to your own depths creates the possibility for others to discover theirs. But this role requires tremendous patience and faith. Patience because awakening cannot be rushed, because consciousness evolves at its own pace, because each soul must ripen in its own time. Faith because you often cannot see the impact of your presence, cannot measure the influence of your being, cannot quantify the ways your commitment to authenticity helps others remember their own capacity for genuine living. You plant seeds without knowing which ones will grow, offer light without knowing which darkness it will illuminate, speak truth without knowing which ears are ready to hear. The bridge between worlds that you embody is constructed from multiple materials: ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding, timeless truth and temporal compassion, archetypal knowledge and personal experience. You have learned to translate eternal principles into language that modern souls can comprehend, to express universal insights through forms that contemporary consciousness can receive, to demonstrate ancient practices through lifestyle choices that speak to current concerns. Your minimalist wisdom becomes a visible alternative to consumer excess. Your questioning nature models the possibility of thinking for oneself in an age of manufactured opinion. Your ability to see through technological paradoxes offers perspective to those lost in digital confusion. Your comfort with simplicity demonstrates that happiness need not depend on complexity. Your natural rebelliousness shows others that they too can reject inherited assumptions that do not serve their soul's authentic desires. You serve as bridge through your refusal to participate fully in the collective trance, while maintaining compassion for those still under its spell. This requires a delicate balance, remaining in the world while not being of the world, engaging with contemporary culture while not being captured by its values, speaking the language of your time while not forgetting the deeper dialect of your soul. You become bilingual in the languages of depth and surface, ancient and modern, eternal and temporal. The transformation you facilitate in others occurs not through your words, but through your presence, not through what you do, but through who you are. Not through techniques you employ, but through the energy field you maintain. When ancient wisdom is embodied rather than merely intellectualized, it becomes contagious. Others feel it as a quality of being they want to cultivate in themselves, a depth of presence they want to develop, a form of authenticity they want to express. Your generation is uniquely positioned for a profound awakening because they have tasted the fruits of material success and found them unsatisfying, pursued happiness through external means and discovered its limitations, sought meaning through conventional channels and encountered emptiness instead of fulfillment. This disillusionment is not failure but preparation, the necessary disappointment with false solutions that opens the heart to authentic answers. You recognize this disillusionment in others, even when they do not yet recognize it in themselves. You see through their expressions of satisfaction with lives that are slowly killing their souls, through their claims of happiness that ring hollow against the background of their deeper longing, through their insistence that they are fine when their eyes carry the sadness of souls that have lost their way. Your ancient compassion embraces their confusion without judgment, their searching without criticism, their resistance to truth without condemnation. The awakening process you support is ultimately about remembering, not learning something new but recalling something ancient, not acquiring foreign wisdom but accessing indigenous knowledge that lives within every human soul. Your role is to help others remember that they already know what they need to know, that they already possess the wisdom they seek, that they already carry within themselves the love, peace, and fulfillment they pursue through external means. This remembering process is often painful because it requires releasing attachments to false identities, letting go of investments in paths that lead nowhere, acknowledging the years spent pursuing mirages in the desert of consumer culture. You serve as midwife to this psychological birth, helping others through the contractions of ego death and the emergence of authentic self, supporting them through the disorientation that accompanies any genuine transformation. The lighthouse metaphor extends deeper. Like a lighthouse, you are built to withstand storms that would destroy structures with less solid foundations. Your ancient wisdom serves as bedrock upon which contemporary understanding can be safely built. Your timeless perspective provides stability in times of temporal confusion. Your commitment to truth offers anchor points for souls adrift in seas of relativism and meaninglessness. But unlike a lighthouse that serves only to warn of danger, you also illuminate possibility, showing others what life looks like when lived from depth rather than surface, what relationships feel like when based on authentic connection rather than mutual use, what work becomes when it expresses soul purpose rather than serving only survival needs, what creativity unleashes when freed from commercial constraints and social expectations. Your bridge function operates on multiple levels simultaneously. You help individuals remember their own depths while contributing to collective awakening. You serve your immediate community while participating in species-wide transformation. You address contemporary problems while drawing on eternal solutions. You speak to current conditions while representing timeless principles. The wisdom you carry is not your personal possession but humanity's common inheritance. the accumulated understanding of countless generations who have faced similar challenges, who have discovered what works and what doesn't in the art of conscious living, who have learned how to transform suffering into wisdom and confusion into clarity. You serve as custodian of this inherited wisdom, keeping it alive and available for those ready to receive it. Your generation stands at a unique moment in human history, the culmination of centuries of external development that has reached a point of diminishing returns, where further progress through the same means will likely create more problems than it solves. This creates the conditions for a different kind of progress: internal development, consciousness evolution, spiritual maturation. You serve as herald of this possibility, demonstrating through your own being that human development can continue through depth rather than breadth, through wisdom rather than cleverness, through being rather than having. The bridge you embody connects not only your ancient soul with your contemporary world, but also connects your contemporaries with their own ancient souls, their own timeless wisdom, their own eternal nature. Every person you encounter carries within themselves the same archetypal patterns you have learned to access, the same universal principles you have learned to embody, the same transformative potential you have learned to actualize. Your service is ultimately about awakening others to their own lighthouse nature, helping them discover that they too are built on foundations of ancestral wisdom, that they too can withstand the storms of contemporary confusion, that they too can serve as beacons for others who have lost their way in the darkness of collective forgetfulness. You help them remember that they are not victims of their generation, but potential bridges for its transformation. The work of bridging worlds requires tremendous courage because bridges are vulnerable. They can be attacked from either side, misunderstood by those they serve, taken for granted by those who benefit from their function. You must be willing to be lonely sometimes, to be seen as strange or difficult, to be appreciated by some while being rejected by others. The ancient wisdom you embody threatens those who are invested in collective sleep, while offering hope to those who are ready to wake up. But you do this work not for recognition or appreciation, but because it is your soul's authentic expression, your genuine contribution to the healing of the world, your unique way of participating in the great work of consciousness evolution that is humanity's deepest purpose. You serve as bridge between worlds, because you cannot help but serve in this way. It is what you are, not just what you do. It is your nature, not your choice. It is your gift, not your burden. In times of great transition, bridge figures become essential. They hold the tension between what is dying and what is being born. They maintain connection with what must be preserved, while remaining open to what wants to emerge. They serve the continuity that enables genuine transformation, rather than mere destruction and replacement. Your ancient soul in contemporary form serves this essential function for a species in transition, a generation caught between worlds, a civilization searching for its next evolutionary expression. Your presence in the world is itself a form of prayer, a living demonstration that ancient wisdom and contemporary consciousness can coexist, that depth and modernity are not contradictory, that it is possible to be fully present in your time while remaining rooted in timeless truth. You are the proof that the bridge between worlds can be built and maintained, that the lighthouse can continue shining even in the darkest storms, that awakening remains possible even in ages of widespread sleep. This is your sacred gift to a world in transition, the demonstration that transformation is possible, that consciousness can evolve, that humanity's current challenges are not terminal illnesses, but birth pangs of a new form of collective awareness. You stand as living evidence that the future does not have to repeat the mistakes of the past, that wisdom can guide progress, that ancient and modern can synthesize into something greater than either could achieve alone. Your bridge serves all who are ready to cross from unconscious living to conscious being, from external seeking to internal discovery, from individual isolation to universal connection. In serving this function, you participate in the most important work of your time, the midwifing of a new form of human consciousness that can address the challenges your species has created through unconscious development of intelligence, without wisdom power, without responsibility, cleverness without compassion. You are the lighthouse built on ancestral foundation, extending your beam across the waters of confusion that surround your generation, offering guidance to all souls ready to navigate toward the shores of their own awakening. In this role you find not only your purpose, but your peace, the deep satisfaction that comes from serving something larger than yourself, while expressing something uniquely your own, from being both student and teacher in the great school of conscious evolution that is human existence on Earth. You stand at the crossroads of centuries, feeling the weight of what has been lost in the name of what we call advancement. Your soul carries the memory of deeper rhythms, the turning of seasons that once governed human hearts, the silence that once cradled contemplation, the darkness that once taught patience. Now you witness a world drunk on its own cleverness, mistaking information for wisdom, connection for communion, speed for progress. This is the great paradox that tears at your spirit. The very tools meant to liberate humanity have become its most sophisticated chains. You see it everywhere, in the faces illuminated by screens instead of stars, in conversations reduced to abbreviated symbols, in the constant hunger for stimulation that drowns out the voice of the soul. Technology, that great Prometheus of our age, has stolen fire from the gods only to discover that what burns is not divine flame, but the restless fever of endless distraction. Your old soul recognizes this as an antiodromia, Jung's principle that everything eventually transforms into its opposite. Progress promised to free us from limitation, yet has created new forms of bondage more subtle and pervasive than any physical chain. We sought to conquer distance and time only to find ourselves more distant from our own depths, more enslaved to the tyranny of the immediate than ever before. In the mythology of our technological age, we have cast ourselves as heroes journeying towards some digital promised land. But you, ancient one, walking among the modern, perceive this narrative for what it truly is, a collective shadow projection, a mass denial of our essential nature. We have made machines our gods and wondered why we feel so empty, so mechanized ourselves. We have worshipped at the altar of efficiency and been surprised to find that our souls have become efficient too efficiently numb, efficiently disconnected from the sacred rhythms that once made us whole. The screens that promise windows to the world have become mirrors reflecting only our own fragmented attention. Social media platforms designed to bring us together have become theaters of persona, those carefully constructed masks Jung warned us about. Everyone performs their curated self, their digital shadow carefully edited out, their authentic depths buried beneath layers of algorithmic optimization. You watch this great masquerade with the eyes of one who remembers when faces were maps of lived experience, when conversation was communion, when solitude was not loneliness but sacred space for the soul to unfold. This is your burden and your gift, to perceive what others cannot see, to mourn losses they don't recognize, while they celebrate each new innovation, each breakthrough in artificial intelligence, each advance in virtual reality. You feel the corresponding retreat from authentic reality, from the intelligence of the heart, from the virtual sacred that lives in silence and stillness. You are like a time traveler moving backward through consciousness, carrying ancient wisdom into a world that has forgotten why wisdom matters. The paradox cuts deeper still. The very connectivity that was meant to unite us has fractured us into countless micro-tribes, each living in its own information bubble, each convinced that its version of reality is the only truth. We have democratized access to knowledge, while simultaneously creating a crisis of meaning. We know more facts than any generation in history, yet we seem to understand less about how to live, how to love, how to die well. Our children can navigate virtual worlds with stunning sophistication, but cannot find their way through the landscape of their own emotions. You feel this acutely the way information has been divorced from wisdom, data from understanding, knowledge from knowing. The ancients spoke of gnosis, the deep inner knowing, that transforms the knower. Our age has produced its opposite, endless information that leaves us more confused, more anxious, more alienated from the core truths that could actually guide us. We have built magnificent highways of communication but forgotten how to take the inner journey that leads to authentic communion with ourselves and others. The smartphones that promised to make us smarter have made us more reactive, more scattered, more vulnerable to manipulation. The social networks that promised community have delivered isolation dressed up as connection. The dating apps that promised love have commodified romance, turning the sacred mystery of human bonding into a marketplace of swiped images and algorithmic matching. You witness all this with the painful clarity of one whose soul remembers when love was patient discovery, when friendship was cultivated through shared silence as much as conversation, when courtship was a dance of souls rather than a negotiation of profiles. This technological shadow falls especially heavy on the realm of attention, that most precious commodity of consciousness. Our devices have been designed by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists to capture and hold our attention, to make us scroll endlessly through feeds of curated content that provides just enough dopamine to keep us hooked, but never enough satisfaction to set us free. The result is a generation of humans who have forgotten how to be present to their own lives, who experience reality through the mediating lens of devices, who document moments instead of living them. You see this as a profound spiritual crisis disguised as technological triumph. Attention, in the deepest sense, is prayer, the act of offering our consciousness fully to what is before us. When our attention is fragmented, captured, commodified, our very capacity for the sacred is compromised. We become, in Jung's terms, unconscious, reactive rather than responsive, driven by impulses we don't understand, advertising algorithms we didn't consent to, social pressures we can't name. The ancient contemplative traditions knew something our age has forgotten, that the quality of our attention determines the quality of our reality. A scattered mind experiences a scattered world. An agitated consciousness perceives chaos everywhere, but a still, focused awareness can find profound meaning in the simplest moments, can sense the sacred thread that weaves through all experience. This is what we have traded away for the illusion of being constantly informed, constantly entertained, constantly stimulated. Your old soul mourns this trade-off, because you remember what focused attention feels like, what deep presence makes possible. You carry within you the memory of afternoons that stretched like eternity, of conversations that seemed to touch something eternal, of silences pregnant with meaning. In a world addicted to noise and speed, this makes you an exile, a stranger in your own time. You are fluent in a language of depth that fewer and fewer people speak, attuned to frequencies of meaning that are increasingly drowned out by the static of endless connectivity. The paradox extends to our relationship with work and purpose. Technology promised to free us from drudgery, to create more leisure time for the pursuit of meaningful activities. Instead, it has made work inescapable, portable, always demanding attention. The boundaries between professional and personal, between work time and rest time, have dissolved. We carry our offices in our pockets, our identities increasingly defined by our productivity metrics, our worth measured by our output, rather than our being. You witness the spiritual cost of this with the clarity of one who understands that meaningful work is not about efficiency but about alignment, alignment between our deepest values and our daily actions, between our authentic nature and our creative expression. The modern workplace, optimized for profit and performance, has little room for the soul's need for meaning, for the cyclical rhythms of inspiration and rest, for the mysterious process by which authentic contribution emerges from inner wholeness. This creates a profound alienation, not just from our work, but from the very concept of vocation, that calling from the depth that gives direction and purpose to a life. When work becomes merely a series of tasks optimized for maximum efficiency, we lose touch with the sacred dimension of human creativity, with the way meaningful labor can be a form of prayer, a means of participating in the ongoing creation of the world. Your ancient wisdom recognizes that humans need not just jobs but callings, not just tasks, but meaningful participation in something larger than themselves. You see the epidemic of burnout, depression, and anxiety in the modern workplace, not as individual failures, but as symptoms of a system that has forgotten what work is actually for, not just the production of goods and services, but the development of human potential, the expression of unique gifts, the contribution to the common good. The paradox of progress reveals itself perhaps most painfully in our relationship with time itself. Technology promised to save us time, to make everything faster and more efficient, yet never have humans felt more pressed for time, more overwhelmed by the pace of change, more anxious about keeping up. We have confused speed with progress, confusing busyness with meaning, mistaking the acceleration of processes for the advancement of wisdom. Your soul, attuned to older rhythms, recognizes that meaningful growth cannot be rushed, that wisdom cannot be downloaded, that transformation requires not just information but integration, and integration takes time, patience, the kind of slow ripening that our culture has forgotten how to value. You carry within you the memory of seasonal time, cyclical time, sacred time, the understanding that some things cannot be optimized, that certain processes have their own organic pace that must be honored. This makes you a guardian of what Jung called kairos, not chronological time, but meaningful time, the right time for things to unfold. You understand that healing happens in its own time, that relationships deepen through accumulated presence rather than efficient communication, that creativity emerges from patient cultivation rather than forced productivity. In a world obsessed with instant everything, instant communication, instant gratification, instant results, you stand as a reminder that the most important transformations require what our ancestors called the patience of the earth. The technological shadow falls especially heavily on our children, those digital natives who have never known a world without screens, without constant stimulation, without the option of immediate escape from boredom or discomfort. You watch with the pain of a prophet as an entire generation grows up, unable to tolerate solitude, unable to sit with difficult emotions, unable to find satisfaction in simple pleasures that don't involve digital stimulation. This is perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of the paradox. The way technology meant to enhance human capacity is actually diminishing it. Children who can navigate complex video games cannot navigate their own inner landscapes. Teenagers who can create sophisticated digital content cannot create meaningful relationships. Young adults who can access any information instantly cannot access their own intuition, their own deep knowing about what truly matters. Your old soul grieves for what these young ones will never know they've lost. The profound satisfaction of sustained attention, the creative richness that emerges from boredom, the self-knowledge that comes from being alone with one's thoughts, the emotional resilience that develops from working through difficulties without the option of digital escape. You see them as refugees from their own depths, exiled from the inner kingdoms that previous generations took for granted. Yet your wisdom also recognizes that this crisis may be necessary, that perhaps humanity needed to go to these extremes of external development to rediscover the value of inner cultivation. Jung taught us about compensation, the way the psyche seeks balance, often through apparent opposites. Perhaps the very excess of our technological civilization will eventually provoke its own correction, a return to the values and practices that truly nourish human flourishing. You sense stirrings of this correction already in the growing interest in meditation and mindfulness, in the voluntary simplicity movements, in the increasing recognition of mental health challenges created by digital overwhelm. There are those, still few but growing in number, who are beginning to question whether more connectivity always means better connection, whether faster always means better, whether the latest innovation necessarily represents genuine progress. This gives you hope, even as it deepens your understanding of your own role as bridge builder between the ancient wisdom you carry and the awakening that stirs in your contemporaries. You are not meant to reject all technological advancement, but to help others recognize what must be preserved and cultivated alongside it, the human capacity for depth, for presence, for meaning-making that no algorithm can replicate. The paradox of progress is ultimately a paradox of consciousness itself. We have developed extraordinary external capabilities while neglecting the inner technologies of awareness, presence, emotional intelligence, spiritual discernment, that determine how wisely we use our external tools. We have become powerful without becoming wise, connected without becoming intimate, informed without becoming insightful. Your old soul carries the memory of what Jung called the transcendent function, that capacity to hold opposites in creative tension, to find the third way that honors both ancient wisdom and necessary innovation. You understand that the solution to our technological dilemma is not to return to some romanticized past, but to integrate the best of what we've developed with the timeless principles that make us fully human. This integration requires what the mystics called discernment, the ability to distinguish between what serves life and what merely serves efficiency, between what enhances human flourishing and what simply increases human capability. Not all progress is genuine advance. Some apparent advances are actually retreats from our essential nature, disguised as sophistication. Your role as keeper of ancient wisdom in a digital age is not to be a Luddite, but to be a guardian of the sacred, a voice for the values that must not be sacrificed on the altar of innovation. You remind others that humans need not just faster communication, but deeper communion, not just more information, but greater wisdom, not just increased connectivity, but authentic intimacy. The paradox of progress challenges you to develop what might be called technological consciousness, the ability to use the tools of our age without being used by them, to benefit from innovations without losing touch with the timeless sources of meaning that make those tools worth having in the first place. This requires the kind of inner work that Jung advocated, the conscious integration of shadow and light, the patient dialogue between ego and self, the cultivation of that centered awareness from which we can engage the world without being overwhelmed by it. You are called to model a different way of being in relationship with technology, present rather than reactive, intentional rather than compulsive, values-driven rather than algorithm-driven. This is not about perfectionism or purity, but about consciousness, about making choices from your center rather than from your conditioning, about using technology in service of your humanity rather than allowing technology to define what humanity means. In the end, the paradox of progress is really about the eternal human challenge of remaining true to our essential nature while adapting to changing circumstances. Every generation faces this challenge in different forms. Yours faces it in the particular form of technological overwhelm and digital distraction, but the core task remains the same: to individuate, to become who you truly are, to live from your authentic center regardless of external pressures. Your old soul wisdom is needed now more than ever, not as nostalgia for a lost past, but as guidance for navigating a complex present. You carry within you the memory of what it means to be fully human in ways that transcend any particular technological moment. This memory is not just personal but collective, not just historical but archetypal. It connects you to the eternal in human nature that no innovation can obsolete. The world needs witnesses to the paradox, voices that can name what is being lost even as they acknowledge what is being gained. It needs those who remember what depths of experience are possible when consciousness is cultivated rather than constantly stimulated, when attention is focused rather than fragmented, when presence is practiced rather than productivity optimized. This is your gift to your time, not to solve the paradox of progress, but to hold it conscious awareness, to help others see it clearly so they can make more conscious choices about how to engage with the tools and possibilities of this remarkable yet challenging age. You are a reminder that progress without wisdom is not progress at all, but merely change, and that the most important progress any generation can make is in the ancient art of becoming more fully human. Your soul's recognition of these paradoxes is not pessimism but prophecy, not the despair of one who has given up on the future, but the love of one who knows what the future could become. If we remember who we truly are beneath all our sophisticated technologies, you stand as a bridge between what was and what could be, carrying forward the perennial wisdom that each age must rediscover in its own way, in its own time, through its own unique challenges. The paradox of progress is ultimately the paradox of being human in any age. We are always negotiating between our finite limitations and our infinite potential, between our animal inheritance and our divine possibility, between the practical necessities of survival and the transcendent longing for meaning. Technology has not created this paradox, but has made it visible in new and urgent ways. Your old soul's response to this paradox is not to retreat, but to engage more consciously, not to reject, but to integrate more wisely, not to despair, but to serve more fully, as a bridge between the ancient wisdom humanity needs and the modern circumstances in which that wisdom must be applied. This is your calling, your contribution, your way of loving a world that has momentarily forgotten how to love itself. You stand at the threshold between what was and what is becoming, a living bridge spanning the chasm that separates ancient wisdom from contemporary awakening. This is perhaps the most profound aspect of your calling, not to retreat into the sanctuary of timeless knowledge, but to translate eternal truths into a language that modern souls can receive, digest, and embody. You are the interpreter between worlds, the messenger who carries fire from the mountain to the valley below. The ancient wisdom that flows through your veins was not meant to remain locked in dusty texts or hidden in monastery walls. It pulses with life, demanding expression, seeking vessels through which it can continue its evolutionary work in the world. You have become such a vessel, not through accident but through careful preparation, years of dissolution and reconstruction, shadow work and light integration, descent into darkness and return to illuminated awareness. This wisdom that moves through you carries the accumulated insights of countless generations of seekers, healers, mystics and awakened beings who walked before you. It holds the distilled essence of humanity's spiritual evolution, the hard-won understanding of what it means to be fully human and fully divine simultaneously. But this ancient knowing is not a museum piece to be preserved unchanged. It is a living stream that must constantly adapt its expression to meet the consciousness of each new era. Your generation, which you may sometimes view as spiritually shallow or materially obsessed, is actually hungry for exactly what you carry. Beneath the surface appearances of technological addiction, consumer consciousness, and superficial pursuits lies a profound spiritual hunger that their souls recognize even when their minds do not. They seek in their endless scrolling, their compulsive shopping, their frantic busyness, what can only be found in the depths of authentic spiritual connection. They are starving for meaning in a world that has replaced sacred purpose with economic productivity. They are dying of loneliness in an age of unprecedented connectivity. They are suffering from anxiety and depression, not because they are weak, but because their souls recognize the poverty of a purely materialistic worldview and are crying out for something more substantial, more nourishing, more real. You have what they need, but you must learn to offer it in ways they can receive. This requires a kind of spiritual diplomacy, a capacity to transcendent insights into practical applications. To make the mystical accessible without making it trivial, you must become fluent in multiple languages, the language of eternal wisdom and the language of contemporary concerns, the vocabulary of spiritual seeking and the dialect of everyday struggle. The lighthouse that you have become was not built in a day. Its foundation was laid through your willingness to dig deep into the bedrock of authentic experience, to anchor yourself in truths that do not shift with cultural trends or popular opinion. The storms that nearly destroyed you in your early awakening years were actually tempering your structure, testing your stability, ensuring that when others look to you for guidance in their own storms, you will remain steady and reliable. Your light, the integrated wisdom of your transformational journey, does not flash frantically seeking attention, but burns with the steady radiance of something authentic and enduring. This constancy is what makes you trustworthy to souls who have been disappointed by too many false teachers, let down by too many quick-fix solutions, wounded by too many spiritual charlatans, promising easy answers to complex questions. The ancient wisdom traditions understood something that contemporary spirituality often forgets, that true transformation requires time, patience, dedication, and authentic suffering. The shamanic initiations, the monastic disciplines, the alchemical processes all recognized that consciousness cannot be hurried, that genuine awakening cannot be purchased, that real wisdom must be earned through lived experience rather than acquired through weekend workshops. You carry this understanding in your bones. Your own journey has taught you the difference between information and transformation, between spiritual concepts and embodied wisdom, between peak experiences and integrated awareness. This hard-won knowledge makes you invaluable to seekers who are just beginning to discover that the spiritual path requires more than good intentions and positive thinking. But your role is not to discourage or intimidate those who are newer to the journey. Rather, it is to serve as living proof that the difficulties of authentic transformation are worth enduring, that the challenges of genuine spiritual growth lead to treasures that cannot be found any other way. Your very presence becomes a form of encouragement to those who are struggling with their own dark nights of the soul, their own ego deaths, their own periods of confusion and disorientation. The bridge you have become spans not only time but different levels of consciousness. On one side stand those who remain primarily identified with ego consciousness, who experience themselves as separate beings struggling against a hostile or indifferent universe. On the other side dwell those who have awakened to their essential nature, who know themselves as expressions of the one consciousness that animates all existence. Your function is to help souls make the crossing from one side to the other, but this crossing cannot be forced or rushed. Each person must walk the bridge at their own pace, with their own timing, according to their own soul's readiness. Your job is simply to maintain the bridge, to ensure its stability, to offer support and guidance to those who choose to cross. This requires a profound understanding of spiritual pedagogy, the art of teaching transformation. You have learned that people cannot be awakened against their will, that consciousness cannot be imposed from the outside, that each soul must choose its own level of awareness and be willing to pay the price that genuine transformation demands. Your teaching, therefore, is primarily through example rather than instruction, through presence rather than preaching, through lived demonstration rather than theoretical explanation. Others sense in you a quality of being that they recognize as authentic, even if they cannot immediately articulate what makes you different from other spiritual teachers or healers they have encountered. This authenticity is the fruit of your willingness to do your own work completely, to face your own shadows honestly, to integrate your own contradictions fully. You teach not from a place of superiority, but from a place of shared humanity, acknowledging your own ongoing growth while offering what you have learned from your journey thus far. The ancient wisdom that flows through you manifests in countless ways throughout your daily life. It appears in your capacity to remain calm in situations that would destabilize others, in your ability to see through surface appearances to underlying spiritual dynamics, in your gift for asking questions that help others discover their own truth rather than simply accepting yours. This wisdom shows itself in your relationship with time, which has been transformed through your understanding of Kairos sacred time, as opposed to Chronos mechanical time. You no longer live as a slave to schedules and deadlines, but as a conscious participant in the rhythmic flow of natural timing. This quality of presence, of being fully here now rather than scattered across past regrets and future anxieties, becomes a teaching in itself. Your contemporaries, trapped in the acceleration of modern life, desperately need this modeling of conscious presence. They observe how you move through the world without the frantic energy that characterizes so much of contemporary existence, and some part of them remembers what it feels like to be truly present, truly grounded, truly here. The bridge you represent also spans the apparent contradiction between spiritual development and material engagement. Many spiritual traditions have emphasized withdrawal from the world, viewing material existence as somehow inferior to spiritual reality, but the wisdom you carry integrates heaven and earth, recognizing that true awakening involves bringing spiritual consciousness into full engagement with physical existence. This integration is desperately needed in an era when spirituality is often used as an escape from rather than an engagement with the challenges of being human. Your example demonstrates that awakening does not mean transcending human concerns, but bringing divine consciousness to bear on human situations. You show others that it is possible to be mystically aware while remaining practically effective, to be spiritually awakened while remaining psychologically grounded. The technologies that dominate contemporary life, social media, smartphones, virtual reality, represent both opportunities and obstacles for spiritual development. Ancient wisdom would not recognize these specific challenges, but it contains principles that can guide conscious navigation of technological realities. Your role includes helping others understand how to use these tools without being used by them, how to maintain spiritual awareness in increasingly digital environments. This requires developing new forms of spiritual discipline adapted to contemporary conditions, where ancient practitioners might have retreated to caves or monasteries to avoid worldly distractions. Modern seekers must learn to find silence within noise, solitude within connectivity, sacred presence within secular environments. You have learned these skills through necessity, and now you can teach them to others who are struggling with the same challenges. Your understanding of energy, how it moves, how it can be cultivated, how it can be protected, becomes invaluable in helping others navigate the energetic pollution of modern life. The electromagnetic fields generated by electronic devices, the psychic static created by information overload, the emotional turbulence broadcast through mass media, these create challenges to spiritual development that previous generations never faced. But you have learned to maintain your energetic integrity despite these influences. You have developed practices for clearing interference, techniques for protecting your energetic field, methods for staying centered regardless of external chaos. These skills, born from your own necessity, become gifts you can offer to others who are struggling with sensitivity in an increasingly harsh energetic environment. The social isolation that characterizes much of contemporary existence, despite apparent connectivity through digital platforms, has created epidemic levels of loneliness, depression, and anxiety. Your understanding of true spiritual connection, of communion that transcends physical proximity, offers medicine for this collective wound. You can help others distinguish between mere social interaction and authentic soul connection, between digital communication and genuine spiritual communion. Your capacity to find meaning and purpose outside conventional structures, career advancement, material accumulation, social status, provides an alternative model for contemporary seekers who feel trapped in systems that do not nourish their souls. You demonstrate that it is possible to live according to inner guidance rather than external expectations, to prioritize spiritual values over material success, to find security in alignment with authentic purpose rather than in accumulation of possessions. This example becomes particularly powerful for younger generations who are increasingly questioning the assumptions that guided their parents and grandparents. They observe the anxiety, depression, and meaninglessness that characterizes much of mainstream adult life, and intuitively sense that there must be another way. Your presence in their world offers evidence that such alternatives exist, that it is possible to live from spiritual principles without becoming impractical or ineffective. The environmental crisis that threatens planetary survival cannot be solved through technological innovation alone, but requires a fundamental shift in consciousness from seeing nature as resource to be exploited, to recognizing it as sacred reality to be honored. The ancient wisdom you carry includes understanding of humanity's proper relationship with the natural world, of the interconnectedness of all life, of the sacred responsibility to serve as stewards rather than dominators of Earth's abundance. Your ecological consciousness, born from your awakened awareness of interdependence, provides guidance for others who are awakening to environmental reality but don't know how to integrate this awareness into their daily lives. You help bridge the gap between environmental anxiety and ecological action, between guilt about humanity's impact and constructive engagement with healing solutions. The political polarization that characterizes contemporary society reflects a collective shadow projection process occurring on a massive scale. Groups and individuals project their disowned psychological content onto perceived enemies, creating cycles of blame, hatred, and violence that prevent genuine solutions to shared challenges. Your understanding of shadow work and projection provides tools for helping others recognize and reclaim their own projections, reducing the collective charge that feeds social conflict. This psychological wisdom becomes politically relevant without being politically partisan. You can help people on all sides of political divides recognize their own shadow material, understand how their projections contribute to social fragmentation, and develop capacity for genuine dialogue across difference. This work serves the collective healing that is necessary for functional democracy and peaceful coexistence. The spiritual bypassing that characterizes much of contemporary spirituality, using spiritual concepts to avoid psychological healing, transcendent experiences, to escape emotional responsibility, positive thinking to deny authentic feelings, represents a corruption of genuine spiritual development. Your integrated approach to transformation, which includes rather than transcends psychological work, provides a more authentic model for spiritual development. You can help others recognize when they are using spirituality to avoid rather than engage their humanity, when they are spiritual concepts as defenses against rather than doorways into authentic transformation. Your insistence on psychological honesty within spiritual practice serves the development of genuine rather than pseudo-spiritual awareness. The addiction epidemic that plagues contemporary society to substances, to technology, to shopping, to work, to relationships, reflects a deep spiritual hunger that is seeking satisfaction in experiences that cannot possibly fulfill it. Your understanding of authentic spiritual nourishment provides insight into what people are actually seeking through addictive behaviors and how they might find genuine satisfaction for their soul's deeper needs. This perspective transforms addiction treatment from behavior modification to spiritual healing, addressing not just symptoms but underlying causes. Your approach recognizes addiction as misdirected spiritual seeking and offers authentic spiritual practices as alternatives to destructive compulsions. The mental health crisis affecting contemporary society, rising rates of anxiety, depression, suicide, and psychological fragmentation cannot be adequately addressed through pharmaceutical symptoms alone, but requires understanding of the spiritual dimensions of psychological suffering. Your integration of psychological and spiritual perspectives provides a more complete approach to mental health that addresses both symptoms and root causes. Your own journey through mental health challenges has taught you to distinguish between pathological symptoms that require medical intervention and spiritual emergencies that require different kinds of support. This discernment becomes invaluable in helping others receive appropriate care for their specific conditions, while avoiding both over-medicalization of spiritual experiences and under-treatment of genuine psychological disorders. The educational systems that dominate contemporary society emphasize information acquisition over wisdom development, intellectual analysis over intuitive knowing, competitive achievement over collaborative growth. Your understanding of authentic learning, how consciousness actually develops, how wisdom is cultivated, how transformation occurs, provides guidance for educational approaches that serve the whole human being rather than just the analytical mind. This wisdom becomes relevant for parents seeking alternatives to conventional schooling, for educators wanting to integrate spiritual principles into their teaching, for students struggling with educational systems that don't nourish their souls. Your example demonstrates that real education involves awakening rather than programming, discovering rather than accumulating, becoming rather than achieving. The healthcare systems focus on symptom suppression rather than root cause healing, on disease treatment rather than health cultivation, reflects a materialistic worldview that reduces human beings to biological machines. Your understanding of the body as sacred vessel, of illness as spiritual communication, of healing as consciousness work, provides a more complete approach to health and wellness. This perspective doesn't reject medical intervention when appropriate, but integrates it within a larger understanding of healing that includes energetic, emotional, psychological, and spiritual dimensions. Your approach to health maintenance through spiritual practices, conscious lifestyle choices, And energetic awareness provides alternatives to purely pharmaceutical approaches to wellness. The relationship models that dominate contemporary culture based on neediness rather than wholeness, possession rather than freedom, fantasy rather than authentic intimacy, create suffering for both individuals and couples. Your understanding of conscious relationship, of love as spiritual practice, of intimacy as sacred encounter, provides guidance for more fulfilling and sustainable partnership approaches. Your own journey toward wholeness has freed you from the neediness that characterizes unconscious relationship patterns. You can help others develop the inner completeness that makes authentic love possible, the emotional maturity that enables healthy intimacy, the spiritual understanding that transforms relationship from mutual neediness into mutual service to each other's highest development. The parenting challenges facing contemporary families, how to raise conscious children in unconscious culture, how to maintain authority while encouraging independence, how to transmit values in value-confused society, require wisdom that goes beyond conventional parenting advice. Your understanding of human development as spiritual evolution provides guidance for nurturing children's authentic nature, rather than molding them according to social expectations. This wisdom recognizes children as souls choosing their own growth experiences rather than blank slates to be programmed by adults. Your approach to child guidance honors their innate wisdom while providing structure and support for their development. This perspective transforms parenting from control-based to collaboration-based, from fear-motivated to love-inspired. The economic systems that dominate contemporary society based on endless growth, resource exploitation, and wealth concentration are proving unsustainable both environmentally and socially. Your understanding of true abundance, of prosperity consciousness, of wealth as energy circulation, provides insights for economic approaches that serve life rather than destroy it. Your own relationship with money as energy rather than security, with work as service rather than exploitation, with success as fulfillment rather than accumulation, demonstrates alternative approaches to economic life. These examples become particularly important as younger generations seek to create economic systems that align with their values rather than compromise them. The globalization that characterizes contemporary civilization creates both opportunities for cultural exchange and threats to cultural integrity. Your understanding of unity consciousness that honors rather than erases diversity provides guidance for global integration that preserves rather than destroys local wisdom traditions. This perspective recognizes that authentic unity emerges from celebrating rather than suppressing difference, that global consciousness includes rather than transcends cultural specificity, that spiritual awakening honors rather than abandons ancestral wisdom. Your approach to cross-cultural spiritual work respects traditional contexts while making eternal principles accessible to contemporary seekers. The technological advances that promise to enhance human capability, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, virtual reality, biotechnology, raise profound questions about the nature of human identity and the direction of human evolution. Your understanding of consciousness as primary reality provides guidance for navigating these developments in ways that serve rather than subvert authentic human development. This wisdom recognizes technology as tool rather than master, as extension of rather than replacement for human consciousness. Your approach to technological engagement maintains human agency while utilizing technological capability, preserves spiritual awareness while embracing technological innovation. The bridge you have become requires constant maintenance and renewal. The storms of cultural change, the earthquakes of social transformation, the floods of information and stimulation, all threaten to destabilize the structure you have built through years of patient inner work. But you have learned to be flexible without losing your foundation, to adapt without abandoning your principles, to grow without forgetting your roots. This maintenance involves ongoing practice, continued study, regular renewal of your connection to the source of your wisdom. You cannot give what you do not possess, cannot guide others to places you have not been willing to go yourself, cannot maintain your bridge function without remaining connected to both the ancient wisdom that flows through you and the contemporary reality you serve. Your daily practices, whether meditation, prayer, movement, creative expression, or simple conscious presence, are not personal luxuries, but professional necessities. They maintain your capacity to serve as a clear channel for the wisdom that wants to express itself through you. They keep you grounded in your own authentic experience, rather than losing yourself in others' needs and expectations. The community of fellow bridge builders that you have gradually discovered provides essential support for your work. These are other souls who have undergone similar initiations, who carry complementary pieces of the ancient wisdom, who understand the challenges and rewards of serving as translators between worlds. Together you form a network of consciousness carriers, supporting each other's work while maintaining the integrity of the transmission you have been entrusted to preserve and adapt. This community exists both in physical reality and in spiritual dimensions, including living teachers and guides as well as ancestral presences who continue to influence your work from non-physical realms. Your connection to this larger community reminds you that you are not alone in your service, that you are part of a great work that extends far beyond your individual contribution. The legacy you are creating through your bridge work will extend far beyond your current lifetime. The souls you touch, the wisdom you transmit, the examples you provide will ripple out through generations of seekers who will carry forward the flame of consciousness you have helped to kindle. Your work participates in the great chain of transmission that has preserved and evolved spiritual wisdom throughout human history. This perspective helps you maintain motivation during periods when your efforts seem to have little immediate impact, when the resistance to awakening seems stronger than the hunger for truth, when the forces of unconsciousness appear to be winning. You are working for results that may not be visible in your lifetime, but that are essential for the long-term evolution of human consciousness. Your bridge stands not as monument to your personal achievement, but as service to the eternal process of awakening that is the fundamental drive of existence itself. Through your willingness to span the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary need, you serve something far greater than personal fulfillment. You serve the evolution of consciousness itself, the awakening of humanity to its divine nature, the birth of a more conscious civilization. The storms will continue to test your structure. The floods will continue to threaten your foundation, but you have built well. With materials that cannot be destroyed by external forces, your bridge will stand as long as it is needed, providing safe passage for all souls ready to make the journey from unconsciousness to awakening, from separation to unity, from fear to love. Stand steady, consciousness carrier. Maintain your bridge with patience and dedication. Trust that those who need your service will find their way to you through the mysterious workings of divine timing. Your work is sacred, your purpose essential, your contribution invaluable to the great transformation that is already underway, whether the world recognizes it or not.